Good evening. From the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, I'm Kelly Wright, and thank you for joining me as we spend this next hour together. I do, as always, sincerely hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family, because you matter. My opening observations tonight, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, dead at 87. She died on Rosh Hashanah, Friday. And her 27-year legacy here as a Supreme Court Justice is being remembered throughout the world. Her impact from this bench as a Supreme Court Justice has affected so many lives. And so we'll talk about her tonight and the contributions that she made to this country as a justice on the Supreme Court, one of the 9 judges. And of course, now we know that it's embroiled in politics. But let us remember the great work that Justice Ginsburg did. RBG is what many people have come to know her as. And one of the things that we should point out is that she was small in size, but big in character. And she went on to say that she will always provide room for dissent. She always challenged government. She always challenged by speaking truth to power. And those are my opening observations. With some chanting shouts of RBG, thousands have been visiting the United States Supreme Court, leaving flowers and mementos at the base of the court steps. Ruth Bader Ginsburg became known among the youth of America as the notorious RBG. I talked to some of those who visited the court to remember the life of RBG. They came to express their appreciation for her work, her life. Young and old, black and white, male and female, straight, gay, all have been expressing their admiration for RBG, as well as the concerns they now have in her absence.
While fighting cancer. I cannot think of a stronger woman than her. It is inspiring to think that she could do all that at her age. What if she could do that, I gotta ask for her myself.
Your memories of RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and is that why you're out here today?
Absolutely. Oh yes, absolutely. As far as my lifetime, RBG has been someone who's been a pioneer for our country, for gay rights, African American rights, and also women's rights. So I had to come out here and pay my respects.
Well, I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg was someone who overcome obstacles herself. In the face of adversity, she still was someone to be able to excel to a high position in order to make change for other people. And so that we should also do the same in the face of adversity, whether you're black, whether you're a woman, whether you're a minority, that you still find a way to excel in the face of adversity to find change for others.
Is that something we all can learn, and what do you think is going to happen in the future, since this has happened at a critical time during the political election, the presidential election?
To be honest, I'm a little worried, but with the faith.
What are you worried about?
I'm just worried that it's going to take away a lot of our rights. I'm very concerned about the gay rights. I know that a lot of people, they're not for what we are, what we do, and that's probably going to be something they're going to focus on.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. I have to agree with my brother here. You know, the gay rights, African American rights, we all know the BLM movement going on right now, and it takes a lot here in Washington, D.C. to make that change across the nation, and it starts from the head down. So we definitely have to get out and vote this year.
Do you think she had an impact on women of color as well?
I think that she did. Yes, I do. I mean, I think a lot of her work, I think as a woman of color, her work means, it means opportunities for growth and advancement. I think that she wanted that for everyone. I think she fought for that. I think especially during her time, she was a very loud voice, and we didn't really have a lot of justices who were doing that. And so I think as a woman of color, I think that she did a lot.
She's been absolutely great. She has made a path for all women, I think, and all people who value the democratic principles that we all love and want to preserve. And my concern is that this is very important at this particular point in time, and that we celebrate her in her time, death, but that we don't forget her, and that we vote the right way in the next election.
The main thing is to vote, and your daughter's with you here. As you were growing up, what did Ruth Bader Ginsburg mean to you? Were you aware of her presence on the court?
To be honest, not so aware. I became more aware later, you know, as I read some of her dissenting opinions, which were so strong and amazing. I mean, I'm very concerned about the racial justice and social justice, just because just hearing rhetoric right now, people are just sort of denying that there's any sort of social injustice. People are just like, oh no, everything's fine, and it's clearly not, you know. And you know, for all ethnicities, for women, for LGBT community, it's not all equal. And it's just time to really recognize it and make a change. And I feel like this election's all about that too.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She once stated that real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. And to fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. She's remembered as having stated, women will have achieved true equality when men share with them the responsibility of bringing up the next generation. And she also stated, so often in life, things that you regard as an impediment turn out to be great, good fortune. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, dead at 87, but leaving a legacy of hope for a better tomorrow. So we're talking all things about the notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a Supreme Court justice dead at 87, passing away on last Friday, Rosh Hashanah. And joining me now is political analyst and commentator and author, Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver. Avis, it's good to see you today. And your memories of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the fact that she's now a popular icon among so many young people.
Absolutely. Well, first, I'd like to say, you know, obviously deepest condolences to her family. But I'm so happy that she was able to get her flowers while she was alive. As you just referenced, she did become this icon among the younger generation and got to be elevated in this new generation in terms of people really understanding her contribution to women's rights. You know, when I think of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I think of someone who was inspired by the brilliance of a Thurgood Marshall and the strategy that was developed through the NAACP Legal Defense Fund that specifically meticulously attacked laws across the country in order to tear down segregation and to create a more fair society for African Americans. And she admits that she studied that work, and that was her inspiration for how she also attacked different laws that were discriminatory based on gender, and utilized and mirrored that strategy in order to produce advancements for women and, quite frankly, for men too, who were discriminated against because of their gender. And so in many ways, she was, I would almost say, like a women's rights version of a Thurgood Marshall and his impact on civil rights. And it's really a huge detriment to our society that she's gone.
Yeah, it's quite a loss for the court and, like you said, for society, but it's also becoming fuel for the partisan divide. And right now it's entering to the presidential politics. The president, of course, stating that he will pick a woman and he expects to make that nomination sometime next week. Yes. On the other hand, you have former Vice President Joe Biden saying, no, it should wait until after the next president of the United States is elected, regardless of who it is, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And so we find ourselves embroiled in really a tough battle right now that is taking center stage in this political campaign.
Absolutely. I mean, the hypocrisy is on full display. I mean, it is not even anything that's hidden at this point. To see how the Republicans acted when President Obama had almost a full year left until the end of his term, and have them put the full brakes on Merrick Garland the entire time, not only not having a hearing on his nomination for 10 full months, but also specifically not even giving him the respect of just meeting with him privately. It's about the disrespect as much as it is about the outcome of, in essence, to me, stealing a Supreme Court seat. And here we go, the very same circumstances, and in fact, it's not the same circumstances. No, this is an even more sort of exaggerated circumstance, in that under Obama, there were 10 months left after he nominated Merrick Garland. Now we are well under the 60-day mark. In fact, it's closer to the 30-day mark, just a little bit over 30 days before the next election. And they're trying to ram through a female version of Clarence Thomas. You know, this is an insult to women around the country, and quite frankly, to men. Because we're all threatened by moving over to a court that will be so heavily to the right. I think about, once again, referencing Thurgood Marshall again. Before he retired, he did a final press conference, and when he was asked, do you want to be replaced by a Black person on the court? And he said very famously, or at least I remember it, I don't know how famous it is, but when he said, this is stuck in my mind, he said, you can just as easily have a Black snake as you can have a white one. And I want people to understand that, yes, he will pick a woman, but he will pick a woman who will be the female version of Clarence Thomas. And so if you want this particular court to move to so far over to the right that not only are our reproductive rights on the ballot and at the peril of this particular pick, so are issues like healthcare, which the ACA is coming up before the Supreme Court in just a few weeks, right after the election. That impacts everyone. And let me go back in terms of reproductive rights. That doesn't just impact women. It impacts women most directly because we carry children. But brothers, get ready to pay more child support. Hello, okay? If you want to see voting rights even further dismantled, if you want to see criminal justice issues even further brought backwards, if you want to move back to the way things were in the 1950s and 60s, prior to the big advancements that we saw in the civil rights movement and then the women's rights movements, then this is what's going to happen under this court. And so when Trump was running on Make America Great Again, we know what he was talking about. And this is how he wants to enshrine it into our culture for the next 40 years. We have to stop it at all costs.
Donald Trump has already put more than 100 judges on courts throughout the country.
Yes.
He is, to date, probably the president who has had the most picks of putting conservatives on the court systems, of something like 190 people.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the question is now, if they go ahead with this, it has to be done in warp speed. And yet I'm seeing how warp speed has not affected the coronavirus. Want to get this judge in. So my concern is, should they wait until after the new president is elected?
They should absolutely wait until after the new president is elected. This is crazy. We're only about 40 days out from the next election. And I remember very distinctly Mitch McConnell making the argument that the American people should have a say in the next justice. I remember Lindsey Graham saying the American people should have a say in who is picked for the next justice. And in fact, Lindsey Graham took it up a notch and said, you have it on tape. Remind me, this is what I'm saying. Yeah. And I promise that if we're in the last year of a Republican administration, that you can bring this tape up. And I believe that it should be the American people. They were saying this 10 months out from the next election. Let's just make that very clear.
And the same thing with Senator Ted Cruz, who is now,
oh my God,
doing an opposite call for getting this done as soon as possible. So,
Absolutely.
and to your point, Mitch McConnell has stated, well, we have to do this now because we are Republicans and we control the Senate and the presidency. So there you have it. Hypocrisy, a lot of people have charged him with, and certainly hypocrisy seems to be running today when you look at their previous statements when President Barack Obama was going to make his choice.
Absolutely. It's all about raw power. And let's just make this very plain here. And this is something that I've been arguing from day one. I believe a huge Achilles heel of the Democratic Party for years, not just for this election, is that they tend to not focus on the importance of court appointments. And as someone who is Black, okay, I've always focused on that. Because as a group that has been particularly subjugated and specific laws have been written throughout most of this nation's history, let's just very real, throughout most of this nation's history, laws were put in place that were specifically meant to oppress Black people. Laws. And that's because we were a permanent minority, okay? And what I am suggesting is that one of the main ways that we were able to have the advancements that today we take for granted is solely because of the courts.
Which means people have to vote.
Absolutely.
You can protest in the streets, but you have to vote.
And call your senators. You know, this is a full alarm fire. Each and every lever of power that you have at your disposal, which includes demonstrations, which includes calling your representatives, which includes definitely voting and overperforming at the polls. I'm telling, we need to win by such a margin on November 3rd that it is not even in question, because you know they're going to try every trick in the book to try to steal this election. So it cannot even be close. All of those things we have to do, and all of those things we have to do en masse.
Which leads me to my next question before I let you go. Is Joe Biden and Kamala Harris doing enough to energize voters? I keep raising that question because there's so much that they have to do, and it seems that the polls are tightening.
Mm-hmm.
So what do they have to do?
Well, you know, it is you know, I just would love to see, this is such a precarious moment. And I know that Democrats are very cerebral. And I know that Democrats care about people and they want to keep people safe. But we need to also we need to pull out the stops, okay? I also know that the Democrats have a nasty habit of playing not to lose instead of playing to win, meaning that when they see that they have a lead in the polls, too often they take their foot off the gas and they hope that they can coast across the finish line for a win instead of running all out to and through the finish line for a win. And so I would like to see them choose option B for once, run to and through the finish line for a win. So that means, yes, do all of your, you know, virtual events that you're doing, but still think about ways in which you can more safely interact with people in public. I love the drive-in town hall, for example, that Vice President Bush did on another network. And I think doing things like that, people would love. And it provides an opportunity not only for them to see people in real life outside of a virtual context, because as someone who through my business, I do professional speaking. So I've done in-person events, multitude of those, and I also do virtual events. And there is a difference. I can tell you, there is a difference between the heart connection that you can make with people in person versus the heart connection that you can make with people online. And so if there's a way that they can do both of those things, and maybe they need to lean more on Kamala for that, because, you know, very honest, Vice President Biden is in a high-risk group due to his age, then that's what they need to do. The point is, pull out all stops. The stakes are too high. Do not rely on a, you know, four-corner, you know, offense sort of strategy to win. You have to go for the dunk each and every time.
I like
Me and
the way
my
you're
West
saying
Coast
that. Yeah,
references.
that's all right. It's almost like referencing the most important thing you're saying is that don't lack a killer instinct when you're trying to get to the highest office in the land.
Absolutely.
Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, appreciate you sharing your insights and comments. No doubt we'll be having you on again and again.
Great. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. We'll be back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. So joining me now is the Senior Communications Advisor for Black Media Affairs for the Republican National Committee. He's Paris Denard. And Paris, thank you for joining us today. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she made quite an impact on American society beyond her role for 27 years as a Supreme Court Justice. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, now stating to so many people that he will make a nomination for a replacement for her to fill her seat because of her death, and he will do that by next week. As you know, a lot of people were saying we should wait until after the election so that the next president of the United States, be it Donald Trump or Joe Biden, will be able to have the time to pick someone to replace Justice Ginsburg. What do you say about that?
Well, Justice Ginsburg was confirmed in just 42 days after her nomination. And there's been 29 times that a vacancy opened up during an election year prior to inauguration. So in each case, the sitting president made the appointment. The president of the United States has the constitutional authority and duty to pick Supreme Court justices, and the United States Senate advises and consents and votes on that. So this issue is an issue between the sitting president of the United States and the United States Senate. And that is how our system of government has worked. It's how it has always worked. And that being said, since there is now a vacancy due to the death of Justice Ginsburg after a courageous battle with cancer several times, she's such a physically and mentally strong woman. Now there's an open seat, and it's the president's responsibility to fill it. And if we followed in terms of looking at timing, as you raised, Justice Ginsburg herself was confirmed in just 42 days, so it can be done.
It can be done. It wasn't done when Justice Antonin Scalia passed. I remember reporting for another network the day that he passed, and it was a very sad moment for a lot of people in America who followed Justice Antonin Scalia, a conservative and actually one of the best friends of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is liberal. And here we saw two good friends who loved opera and enjoyed spending a lot of time together. So beyond the personal aspects of that, when Justice Antonin Scalia passed away, Barack Obama, then President of the United States, had made a nominee, picked a nominee, and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell blocked that and wouldn't do it for the 9 months remaining in his presidency. So it's hypocritical that's the argument that's coming up from critics who are saying, wait a minute, let's wait until after the election, which is exactly what Mitch McConnell did, as well as Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Lindsey Graham. Now we have the Republicans reversing that. Why?
I can point to examples of others on the Democrat side who have said just the opposite as well. Chief among them, Joe Biden, in terms of how to handle elections and to seat people and to have an up or down vote. This is politics, and this happens in politics all the time. And so what we have here is a Republican administration with a Republican administration, meaning a Republican president with the Republican majority in the Senate. No one should be surprised that the Republicans want to seat the Supreme Court justice. I am sure that if there were a Democrat president and a Democrat-controlled Senate and a vacancy came up, that the Democrats would want to have their person selected and seated and obviously voted upon and given an up and down vote. So that's what happens in politics. as I've said before, politics have consequences. One of those consequences is power, authority, and judicial picks. And if you are the party in power, you have controls. And those controls, there's nothing wrong with having those controls. There's nothing wrong with controlling the floor. That's how it goes in Washington, D.C., based upon our system of government and our system of politics. And so you can point to things that Republicans have said. I can point to things that Democrats have said that would show that they are looking out for their political, what they think is the right thing to do politically. Ultimately, we just need to look at the Constitution. The Constitution does not say if it's 42 days or 4 months or 90 days. The Constitution says if there's a vacancy, the president appoints, the Senate advises and consent, and they vote on it. That's how it works. There's a vacancy because of the untimely death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The president has the constitutional authority to pick his nominee, and that person, he's indicated that if it's going to be a female, should have an up and down vote.
Getting beyond replacing Justice Ginsburg, what's happening on the campaign trail with the president? The polls are in fact tightening in many states. The president still has to earn some lead in some of the battleground states that he is concerned about, states that he won before.
President Trump is actively campaigning for the vote. He's out there, he's going to different cities and states. The Trump campaign and the Republican National Committee have made over 100 million voter contacts this year. We have surpassed our voter registration from 2016. We've done more in the 2020 cycle than we did in all of 2016. We celebrated Black Voters Day last week, and this week we're coming up on National Voter Registration Day. And so we take the vote seriously. We take campaigning seriously. And that's why you see this president and this campaign out and aggressively going after the vote, safely knocking on doors, doing phone banking, and utilizing all of our Black Voices for Trump community centers that are open so that we can do safe door knocking, phone banking, meetings and events, and engage with the community, because that's how you win elections, by campaigning and engagement.
You mentioned Black Voices for Trump. Where does the organization stand in terms of stating what President Trump, in their opinion, has done for Black America?
It's very strong. We have run now a series of ads on urban radio stations. The first one a couple weeks ago featured Herschel Walker, and who's known the president and his family for over 37 years. And now we have one that's featuring Jack Brewer, who is a former NFL star turned philanthropist, humanitarian, and Christian man. And so we are proud of these ads that we're running. And we are also having events, for Black Voter Day, hashtag Reclaim Your Vote. We had over 15 events across the country at our centers, because we want people in the Black community to know that if you want to reclaim your vote, you should reclaim it from the Democrat Party and look at what this president has done for the Black community. Kelly, as you very well know, this marks the start of HBCU week this week. And when you look at what the president has done in terms of him being a leader for HBCUs, or historically Black colleges and universities, it is factual to say that there's been no greater champion in the White House in modern times than President Trump for HBCUs. And so that is one of the records that we are talking about through Black Voices for Trump. His support for school choice and charter schools is another that we have been championing. In August was Black Business Month. And when you look at what this president has done when it comes to unemployment numbers, while during COVID-19, the numbers have increased for unemployment for the Black community, what we have seen is the past 3 months, there have been consecutive downturns in the unemployment numbers, which is a good thing. Having Black unemployment go down even during COVID-19 is a positive thing, which shows that the economy is waiting and ready to reopen fully and to get the country back to where we were and to even surpass that in a positive way.
One of the biggest issues is how do Black Americans and Hispanic Americans and Native Americans deal with this coronavirus, which has been insidious and disproportionately impacting their lives, causing disruption in their economy, causing disruption in their lives, and taking people away from here. And now we're finding that we have so much on the table to do yet because we're coming into a flu season, we're coming to a cold season, and it could exponentially increase the number of deaths from coronavirus. I want to know what all hands on deck will do to save lives.
What the president is doing with all hands on deck is called Operation Warp Speed. This president has unleashed unprecedented resources and work from both the public and private sectors to get us closer to more therapeutics and more a vaccine for the coronavirus. We are hoping and have faith for a miracle. Joe Biden says a miracle won't happen. A miracle's not coming. I'm a man of faith. I denounce that type of thinking and believe that miracles happen every day, and that with Operation Warp Speed, we could have and we should have something close to therapeutics or a vaccine by the end of the year.
Paris Tenard, Senior Communications Director for Media Affairs of RNC. Paris, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good day. And God bless you. We'll be back with more after this. Joining me now is Dr. Yolandra Hancock, and Doc, it's good of you to join us today, although it's some sad situation that's going on with this coronavirus because it's now reaching 200,000 deaths, and it seems like when you and I first started talking about this back in February and March, we didn't anticipate it would get to this level, and yet it has. What are your concerns?
My biggest concern is that we're going into the fall for cough, cold, and flu season. And when we do not have good control of COVID-19, what does that look like for all of us, both in terms of a symptom identification, because it's a scary time right now. You sneeze and you think you have COVID, right? And on top of that, we still do not have a clear strategy as to how we will mitigate transmission. So you're going into this season with a lot of fear, a lot of concern, and really not an evidence-based plan that I can see, at least in terms of this administration's strategy. Everything that I've seen thus far has been very, very concerning and confusing.
You know, and it's statewide too, albeit it is coming from the national federal government more than anything else. I spoke recently to Admiral Brett Giroir, the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services, and he was talking about how we have to deal with this coronavirus. He was reiterating the fact, like you have, to wear masks, practice social distancing, and yet we still see that many people are going out to campaign rallies without wearing masks. Sometimes they're indoors and sometimes they're out of doors. So the point is, I guess I'm trying to make is, where do we get the real consensus of what has to be done to safeguard lives, not only from the president, but from other leaders throughout this country?
Right. The challenge with a state-based approach is that COVID-19 doesn't respect state boundaries. So if Maryland has an excellent state-based strategy, but Virginia does not, then where does that leave us as a DMV area, right? It has to be a national mandate. When you look at countries like South Korea, look at countries like New Zealand, the reason why their cases are down to like a number you can count on your hand is because they had a national strategy, mask wearing, contact tracing, all of those things in place with a system in place to activate, whether it be south, north, east, or west. The challenge in the US is that there are certain states based on political motive, not public health priority, that facilitates what they decide to do in terms of policy related to the protection of the people within that state. And when you politicize a public health issue, the decisions that are made are driven by politics, not people, not health.
And on that note, what's gone awry in Spain and France and Israel? Because they were actually practicing all of those aforementioned practices, and it was working well. Did they reopen too soon? As a result of that, we're now seeing a spike in those countries?
It's a combination of progressing too soon, but it's also making sure that you continue the measures that you put in place to protect people in the first place. Across the globe, we're starting to see a decrease in testing. When you don't test and identify, you increase transmission rates because people are walking around not knowing that they have COVID-19. And when we know that COVID-19 is more infectious than the cold, more infectious than influenza, we have to maintain those protective measures as we go into the fall season.
So are we talking about here and as well as other places that are seeing a spike, and we've not seen an easing in our spike? It continues to go upwards. Are we seeing that people are lulled into a sense of I'm tired of getting tested? This is a hoax, and which is really just indefensible at this point, I would think.
Right. I don't necessarily think that people believe that it's a hoax. I think that we become complacent. We
Okay.
become, once the numbers go down, there's a sense of safety. I mean, it's the same with, I compare COVID-19 to sexually transmitted infections, right? So when my adolescent patients are out doing what they do and they come back and they test negative, they feel like even though they may have participated occasionally in a high-risk behavior, because they tested negative, oh, well then I must be immune, or I must have had it a while ago so I can go out and do whatever it is I do. It isn't until they get it again or someone close to them gets something that they come back to see me. They're like, all right, doc, what do I need to do? Let me get tested again. Let me act right, right? And I think it's not just the individual citizens, but it's countries as a whole, states as a whole. They get comfortable, they get complacent, and then COVID-19 is always there to show what it does. It's transmitted. It causes infection. Cases go up. The blessing in all of this is that although we've surpassed 200,000 deaths, the death rate continues to decrease. We're right around 2.9 to 3% death rate, which is significantly better than what it has been historically. At the peak of our pandemic here in the US, our death rates were around 6%. So we've been able to reduce that by half. As a combination of decreasing transmission and allowing our healthcare system enough space to literally breathe so that we can keep people alive.
So we're getting it right, but slowly but surely, we have to be diligent in this. When we return from the break, I'd like to talk to you about schools that have reopened, and some are now exercising the will to go back to a virtual learning process for those who have engaged in having physical contact or people physically in their schools. We'll talk to Dr. Yolanda Hancock right after this. Welcome back to the program. So I'm talking to Dr. Yolanda Hancock, and as many people know, we're now 200,000 deaths in terms of COVID-related deaths. And, people have gone back to school. And we're seeing that there are cases where college campuses have had to send their students back home. And then we're seeing in public schools that some of the children are coming down with COVID cases. Sadly, some teachers have died. What is your thought process in terms of, as a public health doctor and a pediatrician, about how we should exercise getting kids back to school safely?
All right, so children returning to school is based on how well the municipality is managing COVID-19. It's percent positivity rates in that community. It's the new cases per week that are developed in that community, and the capacity to monitor, to test, and to contact trace. Because little ones are just a microcosm of what's happening in the community. When you have less than 5% positive testing, when you have less than 25 new cases per 100,000 residents, and there are protocols in place at school for surveillance of COVID-19, whether you are in college or in the primary grades, that's how you approach returning to school. So I always talk with parents and let them know, make sure that these measures are in place across the country. This is how you decide whether or not your child can safely go back to school, particularly in communities of color. There was a recent report out of the Pediatrics Journal that demonstrated that Latinx children are 8 times more likely to develop COVID-19. Black children and Native American children, 5 times more likely to not just develop COVID-19, but be hospitalized from COVID-19. Of the 121 children who died from COVID-19 during this pandemic, almost 80% have been from Black and brown communities. When those statistics speak to the vulnerability of Black and brown communities, not because we're genetically inferior, not simply because of chronic diseases, but because their parents are on the front line. And as I mentioned at the start of the question, if we don't as a community decrease COVID-19, every individual, predominantly Black and brown communities who have to work on the front lines, in the school systems, on the buses, in restaurants, in grocery stores, they are putting their children at risk because we are putting them at risk. That's what has to happen for our children to safely return to school, is that we have to minimize the risk for those working on the front lines.
So, Doctor, there is so much at stake here. And we're, like you said, we're going into the cold flu season, and many people are predicting that there will be a spike. I'm remembering that the Johns Hopkins University once stated that if we don't get this tamped down, we could see 400,000 deaths. Is there any hope on the horizon? We hear talk about a vaccine. Is that really something that you see happening between now and November or next year?
Yeah, certainly if a vaccine comes out, it will provide protection theoretically for a decent percentage who are able to actually get it. The plan or the vision for rollout is healthcare professionals and those in vulnerable communities. The challenge is that when people usually define vulnerable communities, it's Black and brown communities. And with the very dire relationship, I would say, between Black and brown communities, particularly Black communities and the medical community, when you think about Tuskegee, Henrietta, all of these previous issues that African Americans have had in terms of the medical space, folks are going to be leery in getting this vaccine in that community. But we are in a culture right now where people are not comfortable with vaccines in general. When you do something like create something under Operation Warp Speed, it makes people even more hesitant. In order for us to reach the 70 to 80% herd immunity necessary, we're going to have trust that this vaccine is going to work, and it's going to need to be available in mass quantities. Until that happens, mask up, social distance, make sure you stay at home when you're sick, period.
Period. And that puts a footnote on it, period. Mask up, stay at home if you're feeling sick. I like what you said to me last month, mask up, COVID down. Dr. Yolanda Hancock, appreciate you being on the program as always. And I wish we had gotten this under control a long time ago, but we still have a lot of work to do.
We do. We can get it done.
All right, we will. And we're back with more after this. And welcome back to the program. I want to thank all of the guests who appeared on tonight's show, and I especially want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out to watch. I appreciate you. And as we leave you tonight from the Supreme Court here in the nation's capital, hopefully we have been righted, ignited, and united to keep spreading knowledge, faith, hope, love, freedom, and peace. Good night.
Let me break it down for you like this. The rhythm of love is easy to find if you're listening. The color of light isn't red, black, or white, but it's crimson. We all bleed the same. If you don't feel the groove, it's alright. Just give it time, give it time. Come on, y'all. Get on board. Mankind won't survive if our hearts